All right, welcome back. This morning, Talk of the Town. We've got a guest here in the studio and a guest on the telephone in the studio, Kyle Robinson, the Director of Basketball Operations for the ECU basketball team here live in the studio. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Henry. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Now, and you're here to talk about this legislation that we're working on in Raleigh right now for autistic children. But for people who don't know what the basketball operations manager does, the director of basketball operations, you're on Jeff Lebo's staff at ECU. What is your job?
Basically, I do all the administrative stuff from the budget to the travel, anything besides coaching I'm involved with. I've been here for going on 5 years. I joined the staff when Coach Lebo got the job. I was at the College of Charleston with Coach Crimmins before that, but love Greenville. Coach Lebo is an unbelievable person to work for, and really blessed.
His golf game isn't very good, though. He'd say the same thing about mine. He's been giving me grief about my golf game ever since we played together in a tournament a month ago, so that was for you, Coach. Interestingly, you came into North Carolina and you found out when you got here that state law regarding insuring autistic children, North Carolina is not the best, is it?
It's not, Henry, and I didn't really know it when we first moved, but our son was diagnosed with autism last April, and we started the journey with Samuel. He was diagnosed at the UNC Center for Developmental Disabilities by Dr. Brown, and our question was to Dr. Brown was, what can we do to help our son? And Dr. Brown was like, Samuel needs 30 to 40 hours a week of intense therapies. And we asked her where to get that at. And she said it's very rare in North Carolina to find places to get Samuel that intensive therapy because insurance doesn't cover it and families can't afford it. We found ABC of NC in Winston-Salem. So my wife, she and my son Samuel leave on Sunday afternoons and drive to Winston-Salem and stay throughout the week so Samuel can get the therapies he needs, and then they come back on the weekends.
Wow.
And insurance doesn't pay a dime. They deny the claims, so we've taken out loans. My father-in-law has been unbelievable. He has delayed his retirement so his grandson can get the therapies he needs this year.
Isn't that something?
And he's made tremendous progress, Henry. Samuel, when he started in August, he couldn't communicate at all. I would walk in the house, and it was like I didn't even walk in the house. He didn't even recognize me. Now he can say hey, he can say bye, he can communicate by pointing. He gives hugs. He's came such a long ways, and we're truly blessed that we found ABC of NC, and we've made it work for this year. But families like ours can't afford to do it forever. The cost is $50,000 to $60,000 a year for these therapies, and we're blessed. We found a way to make it happen this year. There's some other families that aren't as fortunate, and their child suffers. So we've got a strong passion for it. And
now, other state. Let's say that you were getting this. Your child was getting this therapy in other states. Would insurance pick it up in other states?
Exactly.
So is it that the North Carolina law doesn't require insurance companies to cover this?
Exactly. There's 37 states that require insurance companies to cover the autism therapies, and North Carolina is one that doesn't. A lot of states have a cap. The proposed bill currently is a $36,000 cap per year. The insurance companies would have to cover. There's some states that don't have a cap. States like South Carolina, I believe, is $50,000 per year.
So really, when you get right down to it, if you had stayed at the College of Charleston, I hate to say this, but you would have been better off.
Exactly.
Because your insurance would have covered it, but because you're here in North Carolina when your son was diagnosed, and that's a tough situation. Now, I know you've been working very hard back and forth to Raleigh, and a bill to change that law has gotten traction. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the folks in the legislature. I know Brian Brown's been very helpful to you.
He has.
And Tom Tillis.
He has. The bill, HB 498, which Lorrie Unumb with Autism Speaks, she's been dealing with this for years. was passed in the House last spring, and Senate leadership said that they weren't going to move on it because they were worried about Obamacare. Well, all that was made clear, cleaned up to make sure it had nothing to do with Obamacare between last year and this short session. But Senate leadership has still to do anything, get it out of the insurance committee. So what has happened last week and what will be actually voted on the House floor today is a regulatory bill, and the autism insurance bill has been put in that regulatory bill to try to get it passed a different way.
Right.
And Speaker Tillis has been unbelievable, an unbelievable advocate for families with autism. And Brian Brown spoke out in the committee meeting yesterday morning, loud and clear in support of the bill. He was tremendous. Senator Sanderson has been unbelievable.
Now, you have had support from the Senate from Norm Sanderson, our Eastern North Carolina, and he's vice chair of this committee, is he not?
Yes, he is.
And that's positive.
Yes, it is.
But Senate leadership, specifically, Phil Berger, Tom Apodaca, they have yet to really show their hand on where they're going with this, right?
Exactly.
All right, this might be a good time to bring in Lorrie. Lorrie, is it Unumb?
Unumb.
Unumb. Lorrie Unumb, who is Vice President of Government Relations, Government Affairs for the group Autism Speaks in Raleigh. Good morning, Lorrie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Henry?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being on. This is an interesting situation. I knew nothing about this until Kyle started reaching out to me a while ago. And then all of a sudden you kind of realize North Carolina doesn't really treat families with autistic children very well, do we?
No, not in terms of making sure that families can get access to care.
Yeah.
North Carolina has been a leader on the autism front for decades in terms of research going on in the Triangle and the TEACH program at UNC. But when it comes to ensuring that families can get coverage for the treatment that's recommended by their doctors, North Carolina is lagging way behind.
So this bill that Brian Brown has been helpful on, Speaker Tillis is pushing through, and we hope that the Senate will move on. What would it do? It would require insurance companies to cover the kind of things that Kyle's son is, the kind of therapy that Kyle's son is getting now?
That's exactly right. And it's the same law that's passed in 37 other states, as Kyle mentioned. It requires health insurance that's based here in North Carolina to cover treatment that is medically necessary and evidence-based. We're not talking about alternative things that are way out there. We're talking about your standard run-of-the-mill, the most commonly prescribed treatments and therapies that a doctor has examined your child and a doctor has said your child needs. And so it simply requires health insurance to cover those treatments for your child. And it seems only fair. These are families who are not asking for a handout from the government. These are families who have been paying premiums their whole lives so that in case something happens to one of their kids or themselves, there'll be coverage there. Mm-hmm. And it seems only fair that insurance now needs to step up and do its part.
Where does the bill stand? Kyle and you both have said that Tom Tillis has been supportive, so obviously it's going to be okay in the House side, but like so many things, it seems like it's gotten stalled when it goes over to the Senate. So where do you think it stands, Lorrie, and what are the chances of getting something done on it?
Well, I'm still very hopeful that we will get it done in the next few weeks in this short session. We did, as Kyle described, we did pass through the House flying colors last year. The vote was 105-7. And then got stalled in the Senate because of some issues that they identified with the bill. But the autism community and Senate leadership have worked together over the past year to remedy those problems. And even though we haven't moved in the Senate so far this year, I really think that we are going to. And the senators have heard from autism families all over the state. The grassroots push has been amazing, and I think we actually have a lot of support in the Senate. I know that big insurance is pressuring leadership to not give us a hearing and not move this bill. And, they have lobbyists all over the place, the big insurance companies do.
Oh, yeah.
Very formidable opponents. But I really have to believe that the senators care about the people and the constituents in their districts who have been calling and asking for this bill to pass.
The word that we're getting out of Raleigh, I've been in and out of Raleigh for the last week, and the word we're getting out of Raleigh is that the Senate and the House are so far apart on some budget issues that they literally may leave Raleigh in the next week or so and go home and not get a full budget agreement. And then, they're going to have to hand pick a few things like teacher salaries and things like that we know that they won't leave undone, and do some sort of a continuing resolution. The News and Observer this morning actually mentions your bill as one of the bills kind of hanging in limbo. It's one of the things that there's an article in the Triangle Estates section of the News and Observer today that talks about the fact that this bill is one of the bills, at least you're getting mentioned as some of the bills that could get left undone, Lorrie. But, if they leave and go home and they do not get a full budget, that's a problem for you, isn't it?
It is, and I hear those rumors floating around too. I hope that those are just kind of threats.
You think that might be some positioning to threaten the other guy? The crazy thing about it is it's coming from both sides.
Well, it is. I mean, and it's like this game of chicken, and they want to see who bows out first. But I hope and pray that that's not the end result. The people of North Carolina deserve better than that, and I don't know where the fault lies. I'm not putting blame on anybody. I just hope and pray that our bill, which would be such a good thing, it'll be a feel-good measure for the legislature to pass. It will do wonderful things for the people of North Carolina. I just hope that it doesn't get caught up in the crossfires and fall down that way. I
do too. And I know that, Kyle, you've met with Senator Norm Sanderson, right?
I did. I met with him.
And he's been supportive.
He has. He's been great, Henry. He had his own daycare, so he knows all about children.
That's right. I forgot about that. He did have a daycare center.
Yeah, dealing with children with disabilities, and he's in support of the bill. He is.
Let's say that they don't move on this bill. Kids that have autism, Lorrie, like Kyle's son. What's your son's name?
His name's Samuel.
Samuel, yeah. Like Samuel, if he doesn't get the kind of treatment that he's getting in Winston-Salem now, we're just going to leave those kids behind in North Carolina, aren't we?
That's exactly right. And that's why even very conservative leaders like Tom Tillis can look at this measure and say, this is a conservative thing to do. If these kids don't get treatment that their doctors have recommended when they're young, they are going to cost taxpayers a whole lot of money over their lifetime. Yeah. And, so if you just want to talk about it in dollars and cents, I mean, let's set aside the whole human aspect of it. There's a study out of Harvard a few years ago that says each child with autism who doesn't get this treatment will cost $3.2 million over their lifetime in terms of special education and perhaps institutionalization for some of them, or group housing. Autism is a spectrum, so it varies in terms of what services they would need. But if you average it all out, it's over $3 million per child.
Yeah.
So, just look at it from an economic standpoint. It totally makes sense to invest the money up front and reap the savings in the long term. And frankly, it's not even the state. It's not the taxpayers spending the money up front. It's insurance. The families are paying premiums, and they're just trying to get the benefit of the bargain for their kids.
All right, Lorrie. Well, good luck, and thank you for all your work on this. We'll be following this in the next few days because we're kind of at ground zero here in the next few days, and whether this bill's going to move in the Senate or not. So we got our fingers crossed for you. We'll say a prayer for you.
Well, we appreciate that very much, Henry. Appreciate the coverage and appreciate your prayers.
Okay, thank you. Lorrie Unumb. Did I get it right?
You got it.
Unumb. Vice President, Government Affairs with Autism Speaks.